Hello everyone. Welcome to the AACRAO webinar, It's Taking a Village, SEM Team Dynamics. This interactive webinar will discuss how institutions use teams to achieve strategic enrollment management buy-in organization-wide. For those new to AACRAO webinars, AACRAO is the American Association of Collegiate Registrars and Admissions Officers, a professional association located in Washington, D.C., that serves 11,000 higher education professionals representing 2,600 institutions in more than 40 countries. Its mission is to provide professional development, guidelines, and voluntary standards to be used by higher education officials regarding the best practices in records management, admissions, enrollment management, administrative information technology, and student services. AACRAO represents institutions in every part of the higher education community, from large public institutions to small liberal arts colleges. Today we will focus on Strategic Enrollment Management, or SEM. We'll use the SEM acronym just to keep it simple. So SEM Team Dynamics. The title of our session is It Takes a Village, SEM Team Dynamics. My name is Clayton Smith. I'm an associate professor in the Faculty of Education at the University of Windsor and also serve as director of the AACRAO Strategic Enrollment Management Conference and senior consultant with AACRAO Consulting. Joining me on this webinar presentation is Karen Miller, Provost at Cuyahoga Community College, and Randall Langston, Vice President for Enrollment Management at Texas Women's University. I'll provide some introductory thoughts on Team Dynamics. Karen Miller will then discuss effective SEM team practices at community colleges, while sharing a bit about her experience at Cuyahoga Community College. Randall Langston will provide a four-year perspective while discussing his experience at Texas Women's University. I will then wrap up our discussions with a bit on the SEM team experience at the upcoming AACRAO SEM conference. We will be sure to save time for questions at the end of the webinar. And just a note, all registrants will receive an email from AACRAO following our broadcast today, which will include links to the recordings, the slide deck, and a satisfaction survey. So let's see if we can get this started. Here we go. And there's us. And here's a bit on SEM Team Dynamics. So the first thing is I want to say is that Osler Bean and Associates commented some time ago, and this is 1990, that the more people involved in decision-making, the greater the commitment to implementing the decision. And so essentially what's being said here is everybody needs to be involved at some level, but it's just like as it is in an athletic team, it's trying to find out what our role is to make sure that the team works effectively. So before you begin, we think you should identify a champion, someone with organizational authority, maybe the president, perhaps a provost, a vice president, perhaps even a faculty member, but someone who can champion it with credibility and bring the plan to life once it's developed. It's very important. So who should this be at your institution? Well, that's up for you to think on. What we know is that there are existing committees at many institutions. There may be a proliferation of those committees at your place. We find that sometimes there's redundancy between the committees, that we have committees with the same responsibilities overlapping, sometimes even with similar members. And that can lead to an overload on top of daily tasks that folks are assigned. So a few years back, Bob Bontrager and Tom Green put together this SEM Organizational Framework, which I'll just refer to quickly here. And this is a way, in a way, to get outside of the organizational box of who reports to whom, but rather to pull together a team across the institution. So perhaps an executive team. These would be the folks who would receive the recommendations, more operational recommendations that would come forward that would need institution-wide buy-in and support. The SEM Steering Committee that would take ownership for the project, probably representative of folks across the campus. A recruitment council that would focus on the front end, getting students here, marketing, recruitment, student recruitment, sometimes orientation. Retention council to oversee after the student is in the pipeline, right on up through to graduation. Both of those councils probably have a few subcommittees, maybe some working groups. And then a key part of this this play is a data team. We need to ensure that data is part of, supportive of, driving, influencing SEM decision-making. So some tips for effective SEM organizations would be these. This comes from Hausler, Kausbeek, and Bontrager. SEM units most likely to be successful when the senior enrollment officer also sits on the cabinet, president, or in some cases the provost. So the idea here is that the person with direct responsibility for enrollment management needs to be connected to the senior leadership. Senior enrollment officers need to have effective working relationship with the president, the provost, the CFO, to guide them through and employ SEM-related research, to guide enrollment strategies and actions. And lastly, some of these are the functions that we see most commonly in SEM organizations. The offices of admissions, financial aid, registration and records, SEM research are often critical parts of the organization. There's a sense that we need to have a strong network. And so some thoughts here are these, that it needs to be an active network. It doesn't need to be something where people just come together and passively listen to each other. It needs to have an active player. It needs to follow through on key opportunities. There's this notion in SEM of planning the plan, and that is that some institutions, if you will, continue to plan but never operationalize the key components. It's very important to keep track of those. Addressing key challenges. We think that any SEM planning activity needs to start with identifying challenges, doing issue analysis, and that can lead to goals and the rest of the planning process. Outreach and collaboration with partners from across the institution is important. And lastly, cross-training and greater inclusion. Let me try to kind of bring those together for you as I pass this on. It comes down to just a few things for me, and they are these. The notion of executive leadership, absolutely critical. We need to make sure that the executive buys in, and whoever that may be at your institution, but it's probably your president or your chancellor, we need to make sure that there's something called lateral communication. Lateral communication is where we communicate across the campus and up and down the campus, so lateral communication. And then lastly is this notion of partnerships and relationships, moving it from just we check in with folks to do reports at Faculty Senate or bodies of that type, to having true collaborative dialogue where we are all engaged in this notion of enrollment management, and putting it all kind of together for us is the notion that Mike Dolan's addressed some time ago, and that is that we need to make sure that enrollment management sits firmly in the academic context. Let me stop there, and I'm going to now pass it on to Karen. Karen, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Karen Miller. I'm the Provost and Executive Vice President at Cuyahoga Community College. And just to give you just a 2-minute overview about what Cuyahoga is all about, or Tri-C as we're affectionately known in Cleveland. We are a multi-campus community college. We serve over 55,000 credit and non-credit students. We have 4 campuses, a district office, 2 corporate college locations. We're fairly large and spread out over Cuyahoga County here in Cleveland. We have some nationally ranked and known programs in both nursing and health careers. We've got a very strong workforce program. And we're the oldest in community college, have the lowest tuition in the state, and the biggest in the greater Northeast Ohio area. Given all of that, and as we think about SEM planning and teams, and as Clayton talked about how important it is to have top leadership be supportive and really give the mandate or the expectation that this is going to happen, and it needs to be not just about meeting with groups of people and reporting out, but actually about getting the work done. I still think that SEM plans in the community college environment are still somewhat novel. I don't think that all community colleges have gotten to the point where they think this is something that is for them, and it absolutely is. Obviously, everybody has to have a plan and a roadmap, A SEM plan helps to provide that for any institution of any size or shape, but it is a change in culture, it's a change in mindset, you know, as Clayton says, it really is about taking the existing teams that you have and figuring out how to fit it in the framework that works for you. The SEM framework that Clayton shared and that Tom Green uses, and I've helped him present on a few occasions, really does provide a good outline for any institution to start, but you've got to make that work for you. And it sometimes is tough to create new teams, but really look at the framework, look at the existing infrastructure at your institution to create and pull together the right groups of people that make up SEM planning teams. And so critical to identify who those people are, and then figuring out, you know, what you're trying to do, what your goals and objectives are with your SEM plan, and who your student types are, and where you're going to find them, and what, you know, what's the data that informs your decisions. All of that goes into this. For community colleges, those student types are different than in the four-year arena. You know, we talk about returning students and delayed students, and you know, a lot of college credit plus students, what we called here, are dual enrollment, big veteran populations, and so our demographic, our student demographic is different, obviously, than that of the four-year college. But figuring out what that demographic is and where you want to go with your SEM plan is critical. As Clayton said, leadership and support at the highest level is critical. Faculty involvement is also key and can be critical depending on your environment. At my institution, we have a very strong culture of shared governance. Our faculty leaders sit on executive bodies with the president and the executive leadership team. We meet with them in a variety of different capacities, and for all of our significant initiatives at the institution, we have faculty co-lead our work, and so for us it's critical to have them at the forefront as well. And then obviously, you know, your SEM plan and what you begin to build has to have a direct connection to your strategic plan. You know, once that gets built, then, you know, you have an opportunity then to start building the strategic plan, strategic enrollment plan. So for us here at Tri-C, we had kind of a unique story. We had a new college president in 2012, and again, he brought that expectation and infrastructure of shared governance with our faculty. And we just launched, the year after he arrived, a new college strategic plan. We had not in our history had a SEM plan at all. And so at that point, I was serving as the Vice President of Enrollment Management and Student Affairs, and I knew that that was probably my top goal here at the college, was to figure out who needed to be at the table and how we were going to get to that plan at our institution where none had existed before. And so we were also given a very direct charge to impact student retention and completion, and we had to change some of our infrastructure at the same time, realign some roles, move some money around. We weren't given any new resources to do that, but we had to realign FTE and create opportunities for an infrastructure to support completion where there was none before. And so that conversation helped to give some leverage to the fact that we needed a bigger picture plan to do that. We pulled together groups of people that were already doing work at the campuses, recruiters, retention specialists, or what we called success specialists, and a few other key folks in academic and student affairs, and we created success teams at each of the campuses by pulling existing groups together. We started to look at data, not just as a report after the fact, but we started to use Civitas and started to looking at it as a predictor for how we would respond to positively affect certain groups of students. So we moved kind of from evidence to inquiry. And at our institution, we were challenged by our president not to just look at it as an enrollment plan, but as an access plan. And so for us, it's a little of both. In the broader term, it's a strategic enrollment plan. So as we thought about the groups of people that we needed to bring together, as you said, I was new to that vice president's role, and I was, again, at the executive leadership level with support from my new college president, and knew we needed a roadmap to get where we wanted to go in terms of all of our recruitment, retention, completion work. We created a district SEM team, and we created a couple of new roles in that umbrella. We have an executive director of enrollment management. We have a couple of what we call completion specialists, because we knew that that was the first thing we needed to affect. And then we started adding to that by creating a college-wide SEM team that is made up of academic affairs, student affairs folks, retention folks, recruitment staff, staff from our IR department, staff from our administration and finance and student accounting department, and some faculty. And we have grown that group to be as inclusive as we need it to be to cover all our bases. So really reflective of the whole student journey and all the services and supports that go around it. We created what we call an IPEDS completion team, and we knew we were charged to look specifically at completion, and so we created a team of people within this structure to case manage and map out a completion plan for a student that was an intentional 3-year, 9th semester plan to get our arms around our IPEDS completion rate most directly, and then move out from there and start to affect other outcomes. We have an equity team that's part of this that looks at all of our demographics and our students of color and the various groups within our enrollment management student populations. And we have care teams at each of the campus that really serve to troubleshoot barriers for students. And this is just an example of one of the more detailed, as we drill down, one of the plans that we've used for our IPEDS completion work, and this is the 3-year 9th semester plan that we talk about, and how we reach out to students that are in that IPEDS cohort rate very intentionally from the moment they get here to the moment that they leave. And it's all about getting results, and we've been able to do that. And so this is just one of those metrics that we've been able to start to move the dial on because of the plan that we created, the resources we've realigned, and the support, the case management support that we've created specifically for this group of students. Again, just one of the results and initiatives that were created under that original SEM plan. And I'm almost embarrassed to say that when we started this effort, as much as we were focused on the student experience, we weren't really focused on completion specifically. I mean, community colleges, students step in and out all the time. Our completion rate for IPEDS was 3.7%, and we just hit 19% this last cohort. So we're working to continue to do that. We've been able to increase the number of credentials that we've granted, 4,400 plus. This is the largest group of completers that we've ever had, both with certificates and degrees. Again, just a couple of the metrics that we've been able to create to influence as a result of this very intentional college-wide work with support from the highest levels of the institution in a structured format, and bringing everybody together to help move the dial. And so with that, I don't want to take up too much time. I want to hand off to Randall to talk a little bit about his experience at Texas Women's University.
All right. Thank you, Karen, and good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. I know we're not thinking about the weekend or anything, but I am actually. But I'm excited here to talk a little bit about SEM team development here at Texas Women's University. My name is Randall Langston. I serve as Vice President for Enrollment Management. My role here is providing leadership. We have many departments within the division, including registrar, academic, actually registrar, admissions processing, admissions, financial aid, and scholarship areas. So all those areas report to the Vice President, and I've been here now about a little over a year, coming down from the north up in the SUNY system. But I wanted to give everyone a quick overview about who Texas Women's University is and who we serve. We have a specific purpose and type of population. You can see we're a primarily female institution. You can see about 90% of our population is women. We do have 10 to 11% male population. Many of those students are in areas like OT, PT, and nursing. We have 3 campuses. We have our main campus here in Denton, just north of Dallas. We have about 10 to 12,000 students here. And then we have the OT, PT, and nursing areas in the Houston Medical Center, in a building there, and then also in the Dallas Medical Center as well. You can see our ethnic diversity here. We are a very diverse campus. We have, approximately over 50% of our students here are ethnically diverse. We have about 44% of our students who are on Pell, are Pell eligible as well. And right now, currently, we're the fifth most diverse public university in the country. Just a few other notes about our institution here. We're pretty proud of, we're #1 in the DFW area for graduates' earnings versus cost of attendance. As a public institution, we serve the public, and we feel very proud of that particular achievement. And we also you can see there we're number 45 amongst 1,275 universities for adding value to students' earning potential. So another great feather in our cap. I will mention, if you look at the bottom there, we're 11-time national champions in gymnastics, and we're also undefeated in football. So I can't hear anyone on the other side, but I hope you see the irony in that we don't have football here at our institution. So. All right, so I want to get to some of the issues for four-year public universities like ourselves, and I was asked to kind of think about these, and I put these down here. I thought it was pretty easy to kind of identify. And one of them is that change is difficult and often unwieldy at large public universities like ourselves. I think it even gets more challenging at even larger public institutions. But everyone is, as you know, if you get into a new position, everyone is wed to, we've always done it this way. How can we possibly do the change? And to make change it's often, as I mentioned, unwieldy at large public universities. The challenge being is that there's many systems and within the institution, whether it be marketing, communications, procurement, legal, all the other areas that you have to work with to push initiatives. So that's a challenge. I think that will be a challenge in any public university. I think it's also important that when you're working in SEM is determining who your key players and stakeholders are. That was one of the first things that I did when I arrived here a little over a year ago, was determine who are the key players, who are stakeholders, how can I bring people together, and we can talk through issues and come to a consensus or an understanding on certain SEM things. I like to say that I call myself kind of like I'm like the WD-40. I come in to issues, dealing with issues here, and then I pull back out of that, and then I come into it and kind of spray some of that WD-40 and work with people. But bringing people together, collaborating on this is critical. Inclusivity and communication with people is critical. I could have also put trust in there. I think trust and communication is the most important thing that you're dealing with. You can have all these great initiatives, but if you can't engender the trust and communication with people, it's going to be very challenging to achieve any of your goals. And I know that not only from the work that I've done, but also in my other role working as consulting. You find that any institution you go to, whether they have large problems or problems within the division and such, it always seems to be the trust and communication at the top of the list. So having trust and communication with people, critical. If you can do that, then I believe a lot of the other things come easy. SEM work, I put on here, is all-encompassing, and colleges and universities need to understand the work that we do and how it impacts them. This position serves on the president or chancellor's cabinet, but I was amazed by the fact that folks didn't really understand really all the SEM, the work that SEM does, in helping educate people about what SEM is. And SEM is not just freshman students entering freshman entering transfer students, entering graduate students. It's actually what I like to see as a kind of a life cycle approach. It's looking at students from the time which they're in the inquiry to the app, to the accepted, to the matriculated, the student life handover there, and then from student life or student affairs over to graduation, and then of course philanthropy and giving back to the institution. So helping the university understand where SEM is situated within all of those. And then I also, if anyone's read Simon Sinek, I like him. I think he has he has a good book called it deals with the how, the what, and the why. And he says basically, in order to be successful, you will not be successful until you give motivated people something to believe in, something bigger than the work to work towards, and that's the why of what you do. And we do that here quite a bit. We're working on strategic planning, and we've moved away from just the how and the what to an operationalization part of it, but also the why. Why do we do these certain things, and help people understand that? Because if you get the why, then the how and the what comes easy. But I think most universities, many of them get into the how and the what, but not the why. All right, so evolution of SEM's team here at TWU. Just like Karen was mentioning at her institution, we had a new college president come in about 2015. We had really no SEM plan. We had a recruitment plan, but no SEM plan. We had no SEM team, and of course, I'm sure everyone will sympathize with this. What were the goals? Obviously, increase headcount and SCH and retention, while simultaneously increasing academic entry characteristics and revenue. So that's pretty typical. Most universities want everything, but I felt that if you don't have a SEM team, it's gonna be difficult to be able to achieve any of your goals. So we had a strategic plan that was conceived. We called it Learn to Thrive, and we had imperatives. This is a scaled down version. It's everyone's strategic plan is quite long, I'm sure, but these were the imperatives that we looked at, and it was called Learn, Discover, Serve, Lead, and Invest, and you can see it deals with faculty, staff, and students here. So we ended up, what I did was I talked to our cabinet leadership and said, I think we need to have a SEM team here to look at how can we tee off from the imperatives that have been developed here, and basically what we did is went about developing a SEM team. I'll show you who the composition was in just a moment here, but we had once we got their strategic plan in place, we updated to another version that included guidance in depth associated with plan imperatives to determine specific initiatives associated with the imperatives. So this was at the campus level, at the university level. So basically all the initiatives were developed to achieve the objectives articulated with the imperatives. So we're all moving in the needle. We're trying to move the needle on at least one or more of the objectives. We had subcommittees that were developed for the strategic plans, and they were designing goals for each strategic imperative. So and I'm just lost my screen here. 1 second here. I don't have a screen here, so I'm going to go off of here. Just one moment here. One of the imperatives that we had, and if you'll just give me a second here, was a way to bridge. I wanted to find a way to bridge between enrollment management, student affairs, and academic affairs. And see it now. I'm back. Thank you. It's a way to bridge between enrollment management, student affairs, and academic affairs. And that was really the idea around the SEM team that come together. And basically what the university chancellor tasks myself with and the provost while we were doing the SEM team was also develop processes and mechanisms to drive new academic innovative programs. Now, keep in mind, I know where I sit at the institution in the enrollment management side, but we have an academic affairs enterprise, obviously, that does their own thing as well. So the university chancellor brought both myself and the provost and said, here's what we're going to do. We want to develop new innovative programs here, and you and the provost are going to work together to do that. Well, obviously, I was not going to do curriculum, so enrollment management typically doesn't do curriculum. So we said, well, how about if I handle the enrollment management, pure enrollment management part of that, and the provost handles the development of the curriculum and how the processes drive that. We'll go ahead and go forward on that. We had many meetings on that, him and I, and we came to agreement that's probably the best way to go forward. So what we did was, because of the urgency associated with developing innovative programs, new programs for the institution, what myself and the provost decided to do was to suspend basically our regular meeting agenda topics with the team and instead develop high-level strategic strategic decisions in developing new academic programs with this existing team that was part of the SEM team. So we were able then to basically say, okay, we're going to go forward on this major initiative, innovative programs, but we would, and I put on here, return to regular, quote-unquote, regular programming during this critical work. So we felt that was a risk on both of our sides because he did not feel that we could go forward with SEM or enrollment management. He could not go forward with his initiatives without involving enrollment management, so which is great. I mean, to have that kind of work relationship and going forward. So we went ahead and suspended the work of strategic enrollment management to some degree, but this still was strategic enrollment management, and then we would return immediately after we did the innovative programs. We would also temporarily added additional faculty resources. There was another individual added on the SEM team temporarily who had it was an academician who had operational expertise to help with granular level academic work. And I did all this, and I agreed to all this because I felt that new innovative programs, new academic programs are critical for the institution, and that ultimately will be critical for us to drive new FTIC or new freshmen, new transfer students, new graduate students. I mean, if you don't have that, then it's hard to drive it in a silo. So right now, we're currently operating 2 times a month. We're developing urgent procedures for academic deans to work to bring forward proposals for new academic innovative programs. We hope to implement some of these in the late this fall into the winter and going further into the spring. So that's where we're going right now on our SEM team. Here's the representation currently on our SEM team. You can see the individuals. We have academic affairs represented. I have an IR individual. He is a statistician. He has a PhD in stats, so he's on that. We have the vice president for student affairs, undergraduate studies and academic partnerships. This individual handles oversight for academic advising and liaisons between enrollment management and academic advising as well. We have that temporary person I mentioned, that person that's working out of academic affairs to help us keep us on task. We have the dean of the graduate school there as well. She's also serves as a professor of sociology, the CFO, and our chief marketing communication officer. So this was a SEM team that we had that I put together that everyone thought was a good representation. And then of course when this new initiative for innovative programs came about, the provost felt this was probably the best group to have as part of his role in bringing people together for innovative programming as well. So we kind of combined it for the time being. I think when you're dealing with an effective SEM team, it's absolutely essential to have the right people at the table. As you can see, it was a purposeful effort to look at the type of individuals at the table. I should also mention it's to be somewhat flexible on that, to bring in, for example, the additional academician to academic area individual to help us on that. I think the team needs to be strategic as well as a group that can make high-level decisions for the campus. We felt that this group, whether they're doing traditional SEM or innovative academic programming, this is a decision-making body. This is not show and tell. This is not reporting out. This is decision-making level, and we had the full backing of the cabinet on that. Cross-functional representations across divisions, essential for success. I think it's critical if you're in a role, certainly at the VP level, for enrollment management, you should have just as much. I feel that you're joined just as much at the hip with all these other entities outside your stakeholders that are internal as you are with your own department or division directors on there. So I feel very comfortable in my role where I can. Literally, we have so many meetings, so many get-togethers that I can work just as seamlessly with academic student life as I could with my own departments in my division. I think also the M leader helps facilitate and shepherd the team. I think if you try to dictate terms and objectives, it doesn't not work. And it's kind of like the shared governance approach that Karen was talking about in her community college. If you can bring shared governance, true shared governance, and shared ideas amongst the team, really that person, the EM leader, becomes a facilitator and really works towards shepherding the team, not dictating terms and objectives. While developing agendas and goals, the conversation needs to be fluid, organic, and free-flowing. We haven't really put together lots of specific agendas with, we're going to do this is 1, 1A, 2, 2B, 2C, 2D. We basically have a goal. We come into our meetings, the conversations are at a high level, they're fluid, they're free-flowing, and we're able to quickly make decisions on the fly, of course, on that. I just wanted to show you kind of a little about what we're doing at our institution and how everything's kind of builds upon one another. You can see these are our some of our initiatives. Actually, the initiatives go down to, I think, the letter T or U on there. But you can see the different initiatives, the status we put on here, the status of each one of these initiatives, and then we built those out to 2021-22. But under each one of these is who's responsible for each one of these different initiatives. And basically, these are the type of things that we're talking about as an institution. You can see where innovative programs currently right now is #1 on our list. And under that, if I was able to click on that, you'd see kind of all the different innovative programs and initiatives that we're doing collaboratively between SEM and other operational units here on the campus. Some takeaways on here. Another quote with Sinek, and he says, the role of a leader is not to come up with all the great ideas. The role of a leader is to create an environment in which great ideas can happen. And we've really taken that to heart. We really want to create an environment where people, especially at this level, can come together, talk, and discuss issues that they have, and then problem solve with that, delegate it, whatever needs to be done. None of this has ever been attempted at our institution to bring together a strategic, high-level team focused on campus-wide enrollment management success, and I could also add on there, and close, joined at the hip integration with academic affairs and student life and finance and admin as well. So I think a change in the culture happens when people are ready for it and also see where the organization is going, hence our strategic plan that we're developing here. I think a change can be made. I believe you need to take measured risks on that. I don't think anyone's ever been super successful if they're operating in a transactional environment. I think all of us try to be as transformational as possible, but if you're going to be in a transactional environment, it's hard to take risks, hard to make really move the needle a little bit. And then finally, collaboration across divisionally is key. If you have a collaboration like obviously what we're experiencing here on our campus, I think you can be much more successful. So I think that's what I have. I'm going to send it back on over to Clayton to wrap up on this part of it.
Thanks, Randall, and thanks, Karen. I just want to pause for a second to observe your excitement and your enthusiasm about the work that you're doing, and I think that's one of the things that we see most about SEM leaders is they are just totally enthusiastic about the work and bringing teams together and helping institutions to move ahead, so thanks for that. I'd like to just pause as well as to add that if there are questions that individual participants in the webinar have, this might be a great time to go to that chat box and drop a few in there. I'm going to attempt to wrap this up with a little bit of a discussion of the upcoming conference. So here we go. First of all, AACRAO has been doing something called the Strategic Enrollment Management or SEM conference for the last 27 years, and so our 28th conference this year is November 11 to 14, that's this fall, at the Marriott Washington Wardman Park Hotel. That's just a few stops up from the mall in Washington, so easy to get to, that sort of thing, and just a marvelous facility. The team experience itself flows from discussions that we've been having at AACRAO for some time. What we know is that SEM is a team sport. that it's not something that you can do by yourself. There was a time, and I remember in the early part of my career doing some of this, where you would hire a really talented SEM leader, bring them into your campus, and ask them to write a SEM plan and hope that you'd be able to achieve marvelous things. But what we've learned is it doesn't work that way. And so over the years, we've seen people coming to the SEM conference as teams. In recent years, about a third of the people who go to the SEM conference do so as teams, and so we built in this SEM team experience into the conference itself. As is indicated here, there's a discounted rate. There's up to $200 off for if you bring 5 or more, and that could result in a $1,000 savings to the institution. So we're trying to encourage it with the registration fees. We assign a senior SEM expert for the duration of the conference, and I'll explain how that lays out in a minute here. But the idea is if you bring your team, they'll be essentially mentored throughout the conference by someone who's been doing this work perhaps at another, but perhaps a similar institution. And then we have some team networking opportunities as well. So this is what the schedule looks like at the conference on Sunday, November 11th at 8 p.m. after the first plenary speaker tells us new and wonderful things. We gather for what we call a team huddle. And that's where you meet your SEM senior team expert, and you plan the conference and talk about how it is that the conference can work effectively. On Monday, November 12th, we will, in the evening, bring the team together. So if you will, the mentor and the team come together and talk about how the first day went, and what we learned, perhaps what are we looking for in the next day, and how that all fits together with the team development on the campus. On Tuesday, November 13th, again in the evening, we do an all-team reception where we bring all the teams together. So it's a chance for teams to meet each other from different parts of the country and sometimes different countries. And lastly, on Wednesday, November 14th, first thing out of the gate, we do a session called Taking SEM Home. And that's where you can ask yourself, what is it that I'm going to do when I get home? What's that one thing I'm going to do, or what's the 2 things that I'm going to do? But let's create an action agenda as we go home. Here's a couple of pictures of a few of our teams. You can see they're having some fun together, and we try to do that at the conference. It's not all serious. We like to have some fun too. And lastly, we've wrapped up what we want to say. And so if there are questions that folks have that you want to ask at this point, feel free to put them in the chat box, and we'll attempt to answer them. And I see a few here. So when bringing the idea of SEM to your campuses, did you receive any pushback from staff, faculty, or administration? Let me ask.
I'll answer.
Go ahead, Randall.
Go ahead. Okay, I'll answer for TWU, and the answer is no, because I think that when I came on campus here, the idea was to move towards SEM was being embraced by the campus. That helped considerably. We had a new provost in place, and part of the provost, and this is another thing that I didn't mention, but one of the aspects of the provost said he went to each of the deans and said, here are the top priorities that I want to see and how you'll be evaluated each year. And some of that was obviously research and moving towards tenure and such, but also enrollment was his number 2 on the list. So with that, we had a motivated deanship that wanted to participate, and that was filtered down to the rest from excuse me, from the associate director, the associate dean level down to the department chair level as well.
Karen?
Yeah, I think it would be crazy to think that you wouldn't get any pushback at all. And I mean, it's a culture change when you're beginning, for sure. And in my case, we had not done a strategic enrollment plan before. Given that I was leading it myself as one of the vice presidents, there was no pushback to my face, but it's the not thinking that it was important enough to play, or not getting timely responses, or people to contribute their information or ideas, or basically not coming to the table to play right away. It's that pushback by not participating, and it's just like everything else. It's a change to the culture. We are finally now. This started 5 years ago, when we attempted to pull the first SEM group together and write our first strategic enrollment plan. And now our strategic plan for the college just ended, and we just launched the next 4-year strategic plan. So we are just beginning the next strategic plan for enrollment. The nice thing is we have a roadmap to do that, and we have a much bigger team, and it is part of the culture now, but it's taken 5 years to do that. So absolutely, I think that's just part of any culture change, anything that you're doing different.
Yeah, I would echo what you're saying. We have, I do a lot of consulting for AACRAO Consulting, and quite frequently what we find is that change management is a key part in addressing SEM. The other thing that we find is a general lack of understanding as to what this whole SEM thing is all about. And so why it's so important that you take time to talk about what is strategic enrollment management. How does it connect with, as Randall mentioned, his institution's interest in innovative programming? How does it connect with shared governance? How does it connect? And when you start kind of building it in those kind of connections, people start to understand. I can say certainly as a faculty member these days, I observe SEM in practice when I see who's in my class and how are they doing and what kind of supports are they provided along the way, those kinds of things. We have one more question, and that's a question that has to do, if I can't get to the SEM conference, when are the 2019 dates for the SEM online courses going to be released? And what I've been told is that those dates haven't been released yet, but it's an ongoing process. And so AACRAO will announce those and distribute those just as soon as they're established. But we have no further information on it at this time. Are there any other questions?
I would just really quickly reiterate the fact that when you're talking about culture change and pushback, I think that's the value of bringing a team to SEM, because the more people that you have engaged in understanding the process, the more you can get people out there on the ground when you return that understand what you're trying to do and you're all on the same page. It's kind of divide and conquer kind of approach, but it really does help to have a team that is helping to change that culture and how the campuses work. So that there's really value to bringing a group of people to the conference.
Karen, let me just... Go ahead,
yeah, and I would agree with that. If you bring one or two individuals there and you have all these conference session notes and you bring it back to your campus and you say, look what I have, it's just not as effective unless you have your whole team there. And I know that I've seen teams there that not only go to the event, go to divide and conquer, go out to each one of the sessions, and then afterwards meet as a group to be able to kind of debrief everything they've seen and then determine how does that work for their institution. It's much more meaningful that way.
Yeah, Karen and Randall, let me just echo that just a little bit. What we see is different types of teams coming as well. So historically, they would have been the obvious suspects: the director of admissions, the registrar, the vice president for enrollment management, maybe the provost. But increasingly, what we're seeing is a wider grouping of the team members coming. So as an example, I was working with one school at the last SEM conference, and what they chose to do is to bring different faculty folks that represented the different areas of the campus that were participating in their SEM, in many cases, subcommittees. So one year they would bring people from their College of Arts and Sciences. Another year they would bring them from their College of Engineering. Another year they would bring them from their College of Business and so forth, as a way to bring in not only the people who were charged with the doing of SEM, but the those that are impacted by SEM too. So this notion of team, it needs to be dynamic for sure. Okay, do we have any further questions? It looks like we are in good shape. I'm going to stop here and thank everybody for having joined us, all of you who have been listening quietly, and those who have been writing us questions as well. That's great. I want to thank Karen and Randall for the time that they've offered out of their busy schedules to join us. And hopefully we'll see some of you at the SEM conference, but if not, best of luck to you with your SEM planning, and may you all have successful teams. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, Clayton. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.